Support Narativ's independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative and check out our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe and download. Hey everybody, welcome to a Friday night after show edition of Narativ Live. It's great to be with you. We have a fantastic show tonight, really interesting topics, all tying into justice and God and the law and the United States of America. So let me welcome Charles Creel first. He's a face you might recognize. He's a documentary maker amongst many other things, and we'll get to more details about who he is in just a second. Hi Charles, welcome to the show.
Hi Zev, thanks for having me on.
And Nina Brulé is back, joining us for a second week. Nice to have you back, Nina. People loved your show last week. They really did. Was it last week already? It was last week. So much fun to have you on. And Greg Oliar, the author of Dirty Rubles, is back with us. Hey, Greg, how you doing?
Zev, how's it going?
It's been a week. I can't, sort of scrambling to catch my breath on the way into the show today. But boy, there's been a lot of news. Did any of you watch the debates or non-debates or whatever it was the last night, or at least had any reaction today to what seemed like a decent contrast is what the Joe Biden campaign wants to describe it as.
I watched a little bit of it, but not in real time, just so that we couldn't register any viewing figures for either candidate. So I thought that might be the best approach. I watched Donald Trump on double speed, and then a few highlights from his opponent Biden, and it was interesting. It was interesting to watch. Trump did precisely the opposite of what it was that he needed to do, unfortunately, which was to not be himself. And Biden did a very good job of being coherent and not looking like he has been characterized. The bar had been set fairly low, but he managed to pull that off. I think in the end, Biden ended up winning last night, and Trump made a fatal error
Greg?
in doing it at all.
Well, I didn't watch any of it. I saw some of the clips. From what I understand, there was the whole boycott NBC thing going on, and I question whether they should have done that. But boy, they really got the revenge in, because they didn't make it easy on him, and I think the whole thing just backfired. First of all, Biden only ran on the work. Trump ran on all three NBC networks, on NBC, MSNBC, CNBC, and Biden still got better ratings despite being on one channel rather than three.
Oh, I didn't realize they got better ratings. That's interesting. That's an interesting note.
Yeah.
Several million.
And you'd think Trump would be a more entertaining hour, even if it's not the most person you're most likely to vote for. He certainly created more fireworks.
I'm sure a lot of his ratings were people, who tuning in for the dumpster fire, which I think they weren't disappointed. I mean, there was that one woman that was on Twitter last night who, the first two times I saw her, I thought that it was Allison Janney doing some sort of CJ Craig thing. And I'm like, has Allison Janney gone MAGA? What's going on?
Yeah.
And then, no, it was just this woman that liked Donald Trump's smile that was trying to look like CJ Craig. And I think that's when I was like, I think I'm done with this for tonight.
I'm looking forward to an actual debate. It would be nice to have an actual debate, and that's next Thursday, as far as I am aware. Nina, did you have any thoughts on that? Oh, I can't hear you. Why can't I hear Nina? Can you guys hear Nina?
Yeah, we can't hear Nina.
Yeah. Maybe you're on mute, Nina. It's quite possible you've muted yourself. While we figure that out, let's talk about the other big stories of the week. Greg, you wanted to talk about Christie.
Yeah, I had been following the Christie thing closely for a variety of reasons, starting with the hospital where he went. Morristown Medical Center is 10 minutes from the town where I grew up and where my parents lived. And in fact, my father was in that hospital 2 days before Christie was. He's okay. Not COVID related, by the way. And I know the hospital well. I've been there a bunch of times. So, and it's a great hospital, and I'm sure he got good care. But I was really curious what was going to happen with him specifically, because of all of the people that have it, that got COVID, that were in Trump's orbit, he seemed to be the least prepared for it physically, between the obesity and the asthma and his advanced age and everything else. It was like, oh God, if somebody's going to not make it, it may well be him. So not that I was rooting for him to die or anything, but I still was curious how it was going to work out. He was in the ICU. It came out today for 7 days, which is a long time.
Long time, yeah.
And he pulled through, but they gave him all of the mono, whatever it is, cocktail drugs that are not available to us. So, the good news, as I tweeted today, the good news is it seems like they do have a way to treat this thing. I mean, if you can save Chris Christie, you can probably save most people, right? I mean, just not to be funny, but as an actuarial, scientific thing, right? And they did that. So, congratulations to them. I'm happy about it. I'm happy that he emerged from the hospital and said, "Oh my God, I screwed up. Please wear a mask," because some of these MAGA don't even do that. But we, the rest of humanity and people in the United States, don't have access to those drugs, and that's not fair. So, they kept this guy alive, gave him a spot at the ICU, and gave him these drugs that other people weren't getting, and that's just kind of not cool. And I want to point out that's part of the whole Trump thing all along. Is it's like these haves and these grifters and the people that have jumped on the coattails of these grifters trying to grab at things and not share them with people. That right there is indicative of the entire way that Trump and his team have handled the pandemic. Make sure that they're okay. Fuck everybody else.
Seems to be the case. Nina, can you? How's the audio going? Are you able to hear you? No, we can't hear you. Oh. So this might require either you're muted or I have somehow made you disappear. But I don't think I can do that. So you might have to reboot your connection. I'll just see you in a minute. In the meantime, let me find a 3 box here. This is what happens in a live TV setting. And it is interesting, Greg, that we were not able to, that he in fact said that when he was training for the debate, if you can do that with Donald Trump, he was told not to wear a mask. And that was part of of what he sort of thought the impression was. So this will sort of work. There you go. I tried to do that. It's a lot to do in a bit. So let's talk about Charles and why he's here, because you've really captured my interest this week in particular because of Judge Amy Coney Barrett's nomination testimony, whatever it is that she's doing. It seems to me that there's something that you've done in your work which really ties into what Amy Coney Barrett has also had behind her in terms of getting her to this nomination. So let's first describe your movie, which is a fantastic movie. It's called People You May Know. And tell us a little bit about it and how you got to be in that position where you made this movie.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. And thanks for your compliments about the film. We're always happy to hear feedback and that it's been relevant for people. People You May Know is a feature documentary. It was co-directed by myself and Katarina Galein-Viken, who is a Norwegian-British filmmaker and doing some really terrific work. Essentially, what it does is it shows that the Koch brothers, through one of their charities, Communio, commissioned Cambridge Analytica and a Christian software company called Glue to build a platform, a software as a service platform, that would allow churches to identify people who don't attend church who are suffering from mental illness, grief, who are vulnerable, who are suffering from addiction, ADHD, bipolar, etc., financial distress, or who may be going through a divorce, and then to specifically target those people with both social media and more traditional outreach media that churches might use in order to recruit them into the church, monetize them for the church, and then weaponize them for the politics of the far right.
So we're talking about an actual campaign to target these people for political purposes, though, not just because the church might be interested in helping them. They were being targeted for the Koch brothers and for political ends, it seems.
That's exactly right. And if you have heard of Chris Vickery, who is a security specialist and security analyst who discovered a database from Aggregate IQ, which is a company associated with Cambridge Analytica, he also discovered a huge database from United in Purpose, which is a Christian charity in the United States, a 501c3. And this United in Purpose database parallels the RNC database.
So you mentioned Chris
one goes
Vickery.
up 5 million, the other goes up 5 million. It's pretty clear that data is in a free flow back and forth, and with Cambridge Analytica as well.
So there's a clip from your movie I'd like to show, and it's from Chris Vickery, and it talks about how the database works. So let's take a look at that, and then on the other end of this, we'll come and discuss, see how it all ties in.
Well, if you can figure out that 95% of the people that are interested in thing A are overlapping with people that tend to join your church in your area, you can target the people in your area that have trait A. If you know that this person buys these things at the grocery store, and you know that their friend, Beth, comes to the same church, has a kid about the same age, but you don't have her grocery store information, if you have 3 other friends that you do, you can pretty much guess that she buys about the same type of brands that these other ones do. So even though you only have one little spoke here, it feeds back into the main data pool of predictability. And all of a sudden you have this ability to enumerate things about Beth, or you can draw it out in other teasing ways.
But someone might say, it's just my name and my phone number.
Well, for one individual, yeah, it's with one person, it's like, one single grain of gunpowder, of explosive powder. And you can, light that with a match and, that was fun. No harm done. But when you've got a huge pile of it, you don't want a match to get anywhere near it because it'll kill you. They will go to a big mega church, get the pastor, preacher to give them a database of members of the church, and they'll run it through their systems and figure out who's registered to vote and who isn't. And they will identify people that are registered to vote, like the social conservative, Republican conservative type feelings, very anti-gay, very anti-abortion, very hard line. And they'll find one of those people and make them into a champion. And then it's up to the champion that is a registered voter to
convince them to vote. It goes on like that. And I don't want to run too much of your clip because, people want to watch your documentary, which is fantastic, and includes all of those kinds of easy to follow charts in what is a very complicated story. So tell us a little bit more about this database. You've got people being targeted to be champions within a church setting by the Koch brothers, by their organizations. And these are people who are vulnerable because they are either facing addiction problems or might have marital problems or other problems that they might normally seek a church for. And they are being turned into the champions in their vulnerability for the Koch brothers and the Republican Party.
It's really interesting that you put it in the way that you put it. I do a lot of work in conflict zones and in frontline states with Russia, but also I've worked from Iraq to northern Asia. And in doing that work, normally I support local journalists, but I find myself doing counter disinformation work with the journalists, and also to a degree counter radicalization work. And when you have an organization out there, whether it's a Russian speaking enclave where they're trying to pull people into neo-Nazi groups, or whether you're in Iraq and you have Islamic State trying to pull people into groups, what they're always looking for is they're looking for someone who's emotionally vulnerable, who can be turned into a champion, who can bring other people in and also marshal people into behaviors that will help to promote their causes.
And we've been hearing the same thing with the Patriot Boys, or what they call the Proud Boys, sorry. And the Patriot Prayer, the same thing. They're looking for vulnerable people. Greg or Nina, do you want to jump in with any thoughts or questions?
Can you hear me now?
You can.
Oh, good. That was going to be my question.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to say I was late getting onto the screen here because I was watching I wasn't able to get to the film until later in the day today. And my husband and I were sitting there downstairs hopping mad, talking about how well, when we were all sitting here thinking this is how it goes. When we were all thinking everything was going fine under Obama and everything, the country was just, there were these people plotting away to put this system together, the CNP, and to go through the churches and the data mining, which we know Cambridge Analytica was helping the Trump organization with, and the emotionally targeted ads. It was only a matter of time before they would try to do that with churches, I would think, because they've always been aligned with the churches. And the thing that really hit me was when somebody on your in the film says, I think it was Ann Nelson, says, they were not, the right was focused on the state legislatures and the left wasn't. The Democrats were not focused on those state legislatures, the right was. And these tools have been out there for a while, and I think it's going to become a battle of who controls the data and who targets ads to whom, and how they use it. And I think that's going to happen. The left has to get in and start doing the same thing. This is the way politics is going to be done.
Only the left doesn't have the churches necessarily. Sorry, go ahead, Charles.
No, but there are other places where they could be organizing.
You're right, exactly.
So there are real serious complications in this. There's two or three things to address in what you said, Nina. Yes, they have been out there organizing and doing this work. In fact, the CNP that you mentioned is the Council for National Policy. They were founded in 1981, and they're off the back of Ronald Reagan's election. They are the most powerful political group in America that you have never heard of. And when, in the course of our investigation, we finally discovered for ourselves the Council for National Policy, it suddenly explained my entire adult life in terms of politics and the politics of the right and the rise of the right. So the Council for National Policy was formed off the back of the Southern Baptist Convention. It has racism in it and exclusion in its DNA. And they were founded with the express goal of rewriting the U.S. Constitution by 2020 according to Christian law. And the way that they intended to do that was to call a constitutional convention. That is, 2/3 of the states legislatures need to call a convention. Now, what's really interesting that I've heard out in the news lately, Nancy Pelosi asked people to pay attention to the state legislatures. Please pay attention to that. Her, at least spoken purpose about that, express purpose, was that should the election get thrown to the courts and no one has been appointed to the Supreme Court, then it will go back to the election will be decided by the state legislatures. And right now, the Republicans have a majority. And in fact, those are Council for National Policy Republicans who are there, who have that majority at the moment. I just want to say, you may have heard of the Council for National Policy this week because the Washington Post has run a story where they have 2 videos from the Council for National Policy's last conference. In one of those videos, there is someone talking about directly how to suppress the vote. Well, in the course of our investigation, I went undercover to a Council for National Policy conference. It's the first time anyone's ever done it. Recorded a lot of video there, but we also have more than 20 hours of Council for National Policy sessions, and we'll be releasing those next week, along with the most recent membership list for the Council for National Policy. So look for that on Twitter. My name is my Twitter handle, Charles Creel, and we'll definitely be putting that out in the coming
definitely
weeks.
Share it with us. We'll definitely put it on the air here as well. That's really that's big news. I'm sure there's some interesting names among them. We certainly know that the people like the DeVos family have been very involved in the CNP for a long time. People like Eric Prince, even Michael Pence, who's the vice president right now. Those people have all been involved. And then there's this other group. The name escapes me. Perkins. What is he? Tony Perkins's group.
It's gone right out of my head
Yeah.
too. Sorry, that's
No worries. But there's a lot
that
of
was a
this.
setup.
These are all people that are set up, very supportive of the Trump campaign. We think of the Trump coalition. Yes, it's made up of Russia and a bunch of foreign entities. It's also made up by a bunch of, very far right extremist Christians. They're not even, they're not Christians of your, day-to-day variety. They are very extremist in their points of view, and you've had to encounter that as you did your documentary, and it involves everything from abortion to gay rights to just ordinary rights, including the voting rights. Tell us a little bit more about this sort of extremist ideology of these extreme Christians.
So the idea is from the moral part of the Council for National Policy. And by the way, Tony Perkins was the last president of the CNP,
Right.
Before Bill Walton, who's the current president. So there's a moral component to it where you have the Christian organizations, and what they've been really very good at doing is getting not only the evangelicals but also Catholics to come in. And Steve Bannon is a member of the Council for National Policy. Kellyanne Conway, by the way, is a member as well, but they've both been scrubbed from the recent membership list. As people go into the Trump cabinet, they're scrubbed from the list, but the CNP is effectively providing the bodies for the revolving door of the Trump cabinet, and has been over the past 2 or 3 years. On the moral side, you have heads of church councils, just about every major figure that you've heard of from conservative religion, and the moral majority over the course of the last 20 years. But then on the other side, what you have is the extractive industries, the oil industries. So the Koch brothers are very big contributors to the CNP. The Mercers are very big contributors to the CNP as well. And this brings all of these different figures together. So when I was working on this film, because I was the advisor to the DCMS Select Committee on Fake News in the United Kingdom, which is where my home is in London, I was running across Russia, I was running across Brexit, I was running across the Republicans and the Trump cabinet. I had Cambridge Analytica coming into the story. I had Henley and Partners coming into the story. I had so many different figures. Malta was a part of the story. And what I couldn't find was the one thing that brought everything together. And then I found it, and it was the Council for National Policy, and bam, everything suddenly made sense. Paul Manafort was a member of the Council for National Policy. So Manafort is the man who brought the Republicans to Russia and convinced them that no, Russia is a Christian state. It's a moral state because of Russian Orthodoxy.
That's how he convinced them.
That is how he convinced them, yes.
Well, one way or the other. I mean, people say he was more of an agent for the Russians in terms of that's the way they might have lured in the Republican Party to the Russian fold. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So that's exactly what I'm saying. And also Wayne LaPierre is a member, as is Oliver North is a member. So this explains our whole NRA story. It's amazing what a hub this is for all of these different interests.
And the end goal, you say, is potentially a rewritten constitution, right? Is a constitutional assembly, I guess, that each state can vote on independently, right? And when they each have a vote, and when they get to 33 votes, that's when they can actually call a general constitutional assembly, or however that works.
So there has to be a call in state legislatures for a constitutional convention, and this needs to be introduced in 2/3 of the state legislatures. The CNP is about 3 states short of that right now.
Wow.
So this coming election is really absolutely vital in terms of your local state elections. We all need to be paying attention to this.
So this is not so regardless of whether Biden might stomp away with the victory for the presidency, and we might win the Senate, and we'll win the House. But meanwhile, on the states' houses level, those houses could still be marching along a path that will lead them to a constitutional assembly and convention.
If you're a Republican and you're holding your nose and you're voting for Biden, but you vote the Republican ticket the rest of the way, you are voting for a rewrite of the U.S. Constitution according to Christian law. The reason the extractive industries are involved in this is because what they want to do is they want to severely weaken federal regulation. So that there is less environmental regulation across the states. But if you weaken federal regulation, you weaken it across education, you weaken it across equality, you weaken it across a number of issues that should really matter to Republicans. And I think that it's time for the Republican Party to stand back and have a look at itself and understand just exactly what it is it's supporting right now.
Well, that is all frightening. Any thoughts from you, Nina or Greg?
Well, is the Republican Party officially supporting that? I don't think so. Are they? They're not out front on it.
The Republican
they're-
Party is not out front on
Yeah,
rewriting the U.S.
but their members
Constitution.
are. I mean,
The CMP is out front about it. Yes.
I know a little bit about that because I signed up for their emails, and what I get from the Convention of States is what they call it. What I'm getting is that they're selling it on a balanced budget. Put a balanced budget into that into the Constitution. Put it in as a plank, as a bill. I think that's what they're working on. Greg, you're shaking your head. I don't. And I think
no.
that's how
I'm shaking my head because
it's
such a terrible idea. I mean, it's just so stupid.
They're selling it. Well, but it's what he's talking about. I mean, they're selling it on starve the state, right? So that poor and brown people can't get free stuff, and that's how they're selling it to the grander non-religious community. But it's interesting because I've never heard that what they're really trying to do is make it a Trojan horse for all of these moral and rights limiting amendments that they would put in there.
Once you call the
Horrifying.
convention, you can introduce other issues and you can introduce other amendments. You could introduce term limits.
And
this is
chilling.
I've seen like posters on people's lawn about the Constitutional Convention. This is something that they've been working at for a long time, and I think that the obvious solution is the same solution that we have when they install Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court. We need more justices, and we need more states. We need more Puerto Rico. We need some DC. We need some Guam, and then you have 33. Fuck you. How about that?
Yeah,
You'll be able to have Britain pretty soon.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Honorable Amy Coney Barrett, let's take a listen to some of the positions she outlined this week, or didn't outline. Okay, go ahead.
Zev, real quick before you go, I'm
absolutely.
sorry. I'm monitoring the comments, which is some great comments. People want to know, Charles, where they can watch the movie.
Oh, yeah, let's answer that.
So you can watch the film. Go to Amazon Prime and search for You May Know, and you can find it. It's the documentary People You May Know. You can also see it on Fusion. This is in the United States.
Thank you.
And last I checked, it was on Pirate Bay.
Well, we don't want that one.
But
it's really worth everyone's time. Let's take a listen to what Amy Coney Barrett said this week during her nomination testimony.
Judges can't just wake up one day and say, I have an agenda, I like guns, I hate guns, I like abortion, I hate abortion, and walk in like a royal queen and impose, their will on the world. You have to wait for cases and controversies, which is the language of the Constitution, to wind their way through the process.
In day 2 of her confirmation hearings, Barrett, a conservative federal appellate judge, declined to answer whether she believed Roe v. Wade, which recognized a woman's constitutional right to terminate a pregnancy, was properly decided.
Senator, I completely understand why you are asking the question, but again, I can't pre-commit or say, yes, I'm going in with some agenda, because I'm not. I don't have any agenda. I have no agenda to try to overrule Casey. I have an agenda to stick to the rule of law and decide cases as they come.
Senator Dianne Feinstein, whom she was speaking to, was not pleased.
On something that is really a major cause with major effect on over half of the population of this country, who are women, after all. It's distressing not to get a straight answer.
Barrett would also now comment on whether she agreed with the late conservative justice, Antonin Scalia, that the 2015 Supreme Court ruling legalizing gay marriage nationwide was wrongly decided.
Senator Feinstein, as I said to Senator Graham at the outset, if I were confirmed, you would be getting Justice Barrett, not Justice Scalia. So I don't think that anybody should assume that just because Justice Scalia decided a decision a certain way, that I would too.
On the topic of the Affordable Care Act, Barrett declined to say whether she would recuse herself, if confirmed, from considering an upcoming case in which President Trump and Republican-led states are seeking to invalidate Obamacare.
So that's not a question that I could answer in the abstract.
Or from any case that may arise if there is a legal dispute over the outcome of the November presidential election.
Absolutely not. Judges can't just wake up one day.
So she's very much in line with what your grassroots campaign there, run by the Kochs, that and the Christian the Council on National Policy. She's very much in line with what they're proposing in terms of policies.
Absolutely. In terms of policy, she's not expressing it there, but if you look at her history and look at testimony that she's given before, then she's definitely in line with it. It would be nice to look at the cases that she's tried, but she hasn't tried any cases.
Mm-hmm. I spent a little time this week talking to someone who is a member of the People of Praise sect, which is really a cult. It can't be described as anything else, where women are just, the norm of it. The aim of it is really to subjugate women. And she is, at least formally, a member of this cult. She's a person who has spent a long time being part of the leadership of this cult, and that's why, where she comes from, South Bend, Indiana, is sort of one of the big bases of this particular sect of Catholicism. Now, it is Catholicism, but it's an extreme form of Catholicism. And People of Praise have not confirmed that she was a part of it, but people in the group say she definitely was, and that her and her husband were there for a long period of time, even as early as when the group founded in the early 70s. So we're talking about someone who is, when you talk to people in this particular sector, this particular group, you realize that they are not just fundamentalists. I mean, they are women. There's not even the right to declare rape within marriage. That is not acceptable within their world. So never mind contraception or other things. It's illegal to rape within their marriages. It's an incredibly predator-driven kind of environment. And it seems that this is where she comes from. She may not even be in control of her own what she does every day, because she has to obey her husband. That's one of the very rules of this particular sect. So we're not talking about someone who's just a Catholic. We're talking about someone who's an extremist in terms of their points of view.
They're often called Dominionist Catholics, and certainly Steve Bannon is a Dominionist Catholic. The easy way to think about it is just think of them as Dan Brown Catholics.
Mm. Which means what to uninitiated? What is that? What do you mean by that?
Self-flagellation in the basement.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, isn't Leonard Leo and the whole crowd that put this stuff together, aren't that, these are Leonard Leo is part of this grouping that vets all the judges that Trump puts forward, part of the Federalist Society. Tell us a little, isn't that the same kind of fundamentalist thinking that goes into their approach?
I think it can be. One of the things I think I suddenly realized, and I'm not dodging your question, but one of the things I realized I need to be really clear about is that People You May Know is not an anti-religious film, nor is it an anti-Republican film. It's a film about the way that your personal mental health data and your personal health data is being used to target you in order to try to flip you and flip your friends for a different kind of politics. One of the examples that I use is I've talked about this to someone who then said to me, "Oh man, that totally explains my Aunt Edna. Ever since she's had that hip surgery and she's been on those painkillers, she got involved with this group online and getting involved with this cult online. And now suddenly she's a Donald Trump Republican." And so, Aunt Edna has probably been targeted off the basis of her mental health status. And I don't think anybody, no matter what your politics are, wants to be targeted. They don't want to be targeted when they're at their weakest, and they don't want all of their data harvested when they go to church.
Especially
Well,
when
you're in the UK. I mean, you're lucky that you're in the UK where there is a GDPR, right? That's applicable. Well, I guess not, because it's Brexit, but it's more limited that what they can do with the data there than here. It's just the Wild West. It's like this gusher of data. It's the new oil. I actually went to a convention of these data brokers, and they were literally calling it, it's the new oil. And all of these things were completely predictable as soon as the internet came along, and as soon as the iPhone was able to report back to people who bought this information every single thing that we do, buy, sell, where we walk, what cars we buy, and so on. It was all predictable, and in this country, we will not get regulation of it because it is deemed to be useful for commerce, for greasing commerce, right? So this, that's different from what they're doing in Europe. But can I just say something about Amy Coney Barrett for a quick second? Because
Please do.
I take a slightly different point of view on this. I think the people of praise, how much different is it than Opus Dei? How many of those male judges have been Opus Dei connected? I'm pretty sure that Scalia was. And in my view, the Roe issue is really, they don't want to get rid of that because it is such a wonderful organizing tool for them. Her job is really just to maintain, to issue rulings that maintain power for the powerful against the powerless. She's going to be ruling on all sorts of cases that you and I and nobody is talking about right now that have to do with things like forced arbitration. And, of course, the ACA is a good example of that. But that's her role. And I'm not sure that they're going to take, and if once they solve that for their constituents, how are they going to maintain that? How are they going to get those people to come out and vote? This is why they had to pack it, because it's for the Kochs. It's not for these religious groups. It's for the Kochs, and it's for the moneyed classes to keep power against the powerless. That's my opinion.
But you don't think she's going to,
she probably
thrust
will be a vote for.
Yeah, but the thrust towards that's getting a more moral Christian society, it does lend itself to a more authoritarian kind of system. And these people, the powerful, as you might want to call them, they seem to want a more authoritarian kind of system. They don't like the unruly, population sort of rising up against them as they fear they might happen if they lose the majority. And so, I think, at the end of the day, this kind of religious authoritarian policy is what they're looking for.
Well, they go together. I mean, there's no doubt that Opus Dei has been inside fascist dictatorships, from Franco to Pinochet to, I mean, they're all over in those types of authoritarian governments. So they do come along with it.
Yeah. Greg,
do y'all think? Sorry.
Go ahead, Charles.
Do y'all think, and maybe Greg, you can answer this, or but do y'all think that, let's suppose that she does vote against Roe v. Wade, let's say it comes up and abortion goes, and there's no longer that organizing principle there seems to be another organizing principle that could be brought forward for the right, and that's race. Because for the first time in my mature adult life, I'm seeing race discussed in a way that really shocks me. Really shocks me.
And you're in Alabama, right? Right? Are you in Alabama right now?
Yes, and I'm in. I've seen it discussed privately down the bar. That's one thing, but to see the president discuss race the way that he discusses it now is really hard for me to believe.
How's it coming across in Alabama? Are you noticing that people are more are finding it more permissible to be more racist again, or or is it pretty much the same down there, but it's just the rest of us are getting shocked by it?
It's never been a problem to show your stripes down here, I'm afraid. Yeah.
I want, just to piggyback on what both of you have said, the key for Roe v. Wade and for focusing on race is maintenance of the white male patriarchy, the straight white male patriarchy, I should say, which we can talk. Roe, I don't like the word abortion, and I don't like it being framed that way. Choice and pro-life, these words are kind of ridiculous in a sense, because what they really want to do is control the decisions that women make about their bodies and their health. Many, if not most, decisions to terminate pregnancy are done because the pregnancy isn't viable, because the woman is going to die if something could happen. There's lots of really key medical reasons why these things happen, but the only example that they tend to show you is, the 16-year-old kid who is 9 months pregnant and wants to, even though that never happens, they can mythologize this baby killer kind of thing, and that's simply not how it fucking works. What they want to do is control women, and they want to control the gay and lesbian community, and they want to control people of color. And why? Because they want to preserve straight white male rule or patriarchy or privilege over society. That's what this group seems to me to be. And that's what this Amy, whatever her name is, seems to be an agent of, which is, the most effective form of it reminds me of when they put Clarence Thomas in there. Well, he's black. We can put we'll give them Clarence Thomas. Let's find the one black man who stands against everything that he should, and put him on the Supreme Court just to stick it to the black community. It's the same thing with her. It's the same damn thing, and that's where we are again.
Yeah, she's certainly no RPG.
The Trump election was first and foremost a kick in the face to women. That's what I always say, because it was before. We forgot all about that, because afterwards came the Nazis and the intense and insane corruption and all of the other things. But it was that, and he apparently saved her for Ruth Bader Ginsburg's spot. She had been proposed before, and I think that he was waiting for her to be the replacement for the woman. It's just such a grave insult to the legacy, and that's the point, really, right? I mean, it's all about insulting and slapping in the face, making those points. But she's
terrifying.
She's, the originalism is, her mantra. That's how they get away with it. And I just don't understand how those senators can sit there and listen to that and not say, well, do you not think that the founders' opinions on these things would have evolved with air travel and antibiotics and no slavery? I mean, how can you not take those things into account and assume that those people would not have evolved along with our society?
If she was an originalist, she would withdraw. They don't want a woman on the court. The founding fathers didn't even give women the right to vote. Go home, Amy.
And how would an originalist rule on an issue of race equality?
It's a good question, because it's not really determined. Originally, when we started out, this was not an equal country. This was a country where you had slave owners, and slaves. The thing that this woman from the sect that I spoke to this week kept underlining to me is that the Amy Coney Barrett is really a handmaid to these white oppressive Catholic males, and that she was there supporting their decisions and carrying them out within this community, because she was part of that leadership structure, and that leads you down to that incredible book and series. And are we entering a period where we're that terrified of what might be next, even beyond a Biden administration, that we could still see this story of the Handmaid's Tale just still be part of our fear as we proceed in American history?
Zev, just real quick, I want everybody else to talk, but as someone who grew up Catholic, whose family is Catholic, who actually was a confirmed Catholic and who went to Catholic college and was taught by Jesuits. This woman is not Catholic in any way that I've ever interpreted it. So let's be careful with how we use the word Catholic.
Absolutely.
On behalf of all the Catholics in my life, she is not an example of a good Catholic, period. None of these Opus Dei people are. The Father McCloskey people, that their little crew in DC, Bill Barr and these guys, these are not good examples of true Catholicism as I've ever known it. So
yeah, it's the first time I discovered the term charismatic Catholicism, which is the first time I'd heard about it. But that all comes down from that sort of encapsulates who these people are, and its base seems to be in Indiana, where we find Mike Pence, and we find Pete Buttigieg, and we find now Coney Barrett, and who never heard of this place before, but suddenly here it is, a big center of policy making for us. I want to play a little bit of Sheldon Whitehouse. Did you guys see his presentation this week? Because I thought he was really interesting, and it might be an interesting way to put this all together, because you've got this, some funding going all the way down to the grassroots level, as Charles has spoken about in his movie and as expressed today. You've also got the same kind of funding going to the Council of National Policy, which is sort of a more organizing level. You've got the same funding going to getting people like Coney Barrett nominated to the Supreme Court. And he did a pretty effective demonstration this week of how it all comes together. So let's take a listen to him from the hearings this week.
The Washington Post wrote a big expose about this, and that made Leonard Leo a little hot, a little bit like a burned agent. So he had to jump out, and he went off to go and do anonymously funded voter suppression work. Guess who jumped in to take over the selection process in this case for Judge Barrett? Carrie Severino made the hop. So once again, ties right in together. So Center for Media and Democracy has done a little bit more research. Here's a Bradley Foundation memo that they've published. The Bradley Foundation is reviewing a grant application asking for money for this orchestrated amicus process. And what do they say in the staff recommendation? It is important to orchestrate, their word, not mine, important to orchestrate high caliber amicus efforts before the court. They also note that Bradley has done previous philanthropic investments in the actual underlying legal actions. So Bradley is funding, what do they call, philanthropically investing in the underlying legal action, and then giving money to groups to show up in the orchestrated chorus of amici. That can't be good. And it goes on, because they also found this email. This email comes from an individual at the Bradley Foundation, and it asks our friend Leonard Leo, who used to run the selection process, is there a 501c3 nonprofit to which Bradley could direct any support of the 2 Supreme Court amicus projects other than Donors Trust? I don't know why they wanted to avoid the reliable identity scrubber Donors Trust, but for some reason they did. So Leonard Leo writes back on Federalist Society address. So don't tell me that it isn't Federalist Society business. On Federalist Society, on his address, he writes back, yes, send it to the Judicial Education Project, which could take and allocate the money. And guess who works for the Judicial Education Project? Carrie Severino, who also helped select this nominee running the Trump Federalist Society selection process. So the connections abound. In the Washington Post article, they point out that the Judicial Crisis Network's office is on the same hallway in the same building as the Federalist Society, and that when they sent their reporter to talk to somebody at the Judicial Crisis Network, somebody from the Federalist Society came down to let them up. This more and more looks like it's not 3 schemes, but it's one scheme with the same funders selecting judges, funding campaigns for the judges, and then showing up in court in these orchestrated amicus flotillas to tell the judges what to do.
week. So that seems frightening as well, because now you've got this overarching sort of lobbying group that selects judges, picks the cases, and then fights the cases, brings the cases to the courts themselves. And then you've got this, the extension of all these other funding schemes that we've spoken about on the show today. I mean, to me, that's terrifying.
One of the things that we're going to release this week when we release videos from the Council for National Policy is the ex-head of the RNC fundraising giving a speech at the Council for National Policy about how 501c3 groups, that's nonprofits, can funnel money through 501c4s so that they can use their funds to support political causes.
What a scheme, eh? Unbelievable. And it's quite cynical. Greg, I'm not sure if you're still following the comments. There are any questions from the people watching the
people
show?
are writing really, really good things. There's no specific question, I don't think.
Okay. Well, we've got a few minutes left. If anybody has any questions, then it would be great to hear from them. As we sort of near the end of this hour, Nina, any final thoughts?
Well, I just would say the idea that there is one sort of outfit behind all of this is not really inaccurate. I mean, and your observation that the founders were white males and that nobody else had any power, really the people behind this would like to go back to as close to that as they can get. And they've been directly working for it for a long time, not just in the last 4 years, but for years. You read Jane Mayer's Dark Money, read Zachary, blanking on his name. It's a terrific book called The Great Suppression, just about how they've been working on suppressing the vote of the poor and the brown for decades. It's not something new. And this is kind of the apogee of their movement right now with Trump in power. And it's not an accident that it is happening now either, because they're in demographic decline so drastically that they can see themselves losing power within. I mean, the evangelicals statistically are going to lose their voting power. They're already outsized power to their numbers. They're going to lose that power by 2024. The white evangelical Christian power in this country will no longer have the outsized percentage of the vote, because they just have lost by attrition all of their young people. Young people don't care about gay marriage. They may care about abortion, but they don't care about gay marriage anywhere.
And this is the reason for the urgency from the Council for National Policy. They were trying to rewrite the Constitution by 2020 before they no longer had that voting power. They can still do it. There's still those years there.
They're a dying cult. And that's
they're fighting for their lives.
That's what makes them dangerous.
What are they? The Shakers? They just die out, and then there's nobody left to replace them. Boo-hoo. When Texas turns blue, we'll never hear from these people again.
Well,
bye-bye.
Let's hope that happens, because I don't think they're giving up anytime soon. And I think that the fascinating and also very disturbing piece of watching a documentary is that they consider Donald Trump obviously a very big success, and they're not going to stop with the fact that he may not be in power. Come November or January, they'll seek out their next candidate, and and their candidates across every political office in America until they're able to achieve that goal of a constitutional convention.
They've been grooming Mike Pence for nearly 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
But they won't have.
Or they can just fuck off and die out
anymore.
But they're not dying. I mean, they're not going to die without a fight. They're not going to die without a fight. I don't think. I think it'll be very hard to see the right-wing Republican Party or the parts of the Republican Party that just to give up now that they're going to lose. We'll see. So, maybe.
Okay, wait.
But the amount of damage that they're doing in the meantime is unbelievable. I mean, looking at this from a European perspective, because I've lived there for 25 years, one of my main concerns is that we need to get America backing NATO again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's
critical.
Certainly do, especially if Donald Trump gets into a second term. There's no doubt in anyone's mind that he's going to try back away from NATO. That's one of his key policy concerns in the next term. Go ahead.
It'll change the global shift of power in the world.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's no doubt about it. And this alliance with Russia and China, whomever this right-wing Republican fundamentalists have decided to align themselves with. I mean, that's just it in itself is a dramatic shift in the balance of power of the world that is causing great damage to people's rights and to the very to the notion of democracy around the world, which seemed to be so secure just a few years ago, and now might not even be with us in the future. All right, let's go for one last final thoughts from anybody. I've asked you, Nina. Anything else from you, Greg? Or
Yeah, I've got something. I'm going to write about the NATO thing. Actually, I'm working on a piece for my Prevail site for Tuesday about that very topic, because I think it's something people don't really think about, because everybody our age has just known peace for our entire lives relative to the Western world and Europe specifically not fighting. And what an incredible anomaly that is historically for Europe, Western Europe, not to be at war with itself. The last time this happened was during the Roman Empire in like the 2nd century. So, we should enjoy this and make it last. My last thought is going back to Mike Pence. If Mike Pence does whatever his wife says and Amy Barrett does whatever her husband says, if the four of them are in a room, like, what is that like? If they go out to dinner, like, who orders for whom? I don't know. How does this work? Can we have is that part of the tapes you're releasing next week, Charles? This is what we want to see.
Great way to end the show. Charles, tell everyone again how they can see the documentary, because it's really worth everyone's time.
The documentary is called People You May Know, and you can see it on Sundance Now, on Fusion. Go to Amazon Prime, and it's there.
Okay, we'll put a link below this show, so it's just so everyone knows where to get it, at least on Amazon. And we look forward to seeing you again next week on Tuesday, where I'm sure we'll have another interesting show, though I'm not sure what it is. I am looking forward to those tapes. If you'll let us see them, Charles, that'll be great to have them.
Absolutely.
Maybe we'll revisit this on Tuesday.
Send them to you first.
All right, that's awesome. Thank you so much. And hey, everyone, it's the weekend. I hope you guys have a good one. And we'll see you again next week. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks, Zev.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Support Narrative's independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative, and check out our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe and download.